Good morning, Cochrane. Welcome to another edition of Fireside Chat with Mayor Jeff Genung. Today, I have a special guest with me, Fiona Gilbert, trustee for Rocky View School Division. Good morning.
Good morning. It's great to be here.
I'm so glad that you could join us. So I'm going to mix things up a little bit today. Instead of going through the agenda line by line, we're going to skip to the part where we talk about the point where Rocky View School Division had, a lot to do with last night's proceedings. So we were talking about the Horse Creek Sports Park Master Site Plan. So if you haven't heard about this, it's the quarter section that the town is looking to annex, and it happens to be a quarter section that Rocky View School Division currently owns. So Rocky View School Division has been great partners in moving this plan forward. So maybe tell us a little bit about the background from your perspective.
Sure. Well, it's going back a few years now, probably 2013, 2014, that we purchased that quarter section. Originally, we had hoped just to purchase a portion of that quarter section, but for whatever reasons that didn't transpire. So we purchased the whole quarter section, knowing that we wouldn't need all of it for the high school site. And I'm very happy to have, over the years, continue the conversation with the town of Cochrane as to how that excess land, from our point of view, could be used to support the community. From a rec point of view, it's great. It's a great space for some rec facilities. You can't do a lot of building on it, but play fields and things like that, it's a great space for that. So over the years, we've sort of come to that point, and now here we are with a master plan and a concept plan in place to move it forward. So that's awesome.
Yeah. So the point being is these things don't just happen overnight. It's been a long journey, as you say. 2013, Rocky View School Division first acquired the quarter section, and it's so the high school. You're talking about I think the plan shows you have about 30 acres that you need for the high school. And what's the timing of a future high school in Cochrane?
Well, there's a lot of factors in that, and if you look in your crystal ball now, it might be different than when you look in your crystal ball a year from now. But the anticipated kind of time frame is anywhere from probably 8 to 12 years, depending on what can happen at the other two high schools in town. Bow Valley High School, as most people will know, actually was only built as half a school, so there's still the second half of that school that needs to be built that will increase there. Some internal things around Cochrane High and internal renovations can be done to increase the capacity there just a little bit. And so depending on the growth and that sort of thing, probably 8 to 12 years. It's also dependent on government funding as to when we get some funding to build these schools, because as you know, that's a government of Alberta responsibility to fund the actual build of the school. So fingers crossed we get those other things off of the capital plan, and then the high school for Cochrane, the third high school for Rocky View School's perspective for Cochrane, probably that 8 to 10 years.
Yeah. Oh, perfect. So I know we'll have questions about timing of high school, so that you answered a lot of the questions in there. Thank you. So getting into the plan itself, and you sat on the on the committee that looked at the future use of this. So what the town and Rocky View School Division have collaborated on is essentially the town will purchase the remainder of the land from Rocky View School Division. So we'll be left with roughly, 128 acres, I believe?
Thereabouts, yep.
And as you said, there's some restrictions on what we can build there because of the gas plant's location, but also we just need recreation.
Absolutely.
Right? Yep. So it makes sense. So it's north of Heritage Hills on Horse Creek Road and 262, Township 262. So it's the gravel road on the north end of Heritage Hills right now. I'm sure we'll have a graphic that'll come up and it'll show essentially all of that, right? It's a lot of uses. So the Parks and Rec Committee met over the past, I think it's about a year. Excuse me. Did delegation days with a whole lot of different community groups: rugby, slow pitch, minor ball, did I say rugby?
Rugby, we had pickleball,
pickleball,
disc golf,
bike Cochrane,
BMX. We're all there represented.
And some of them actually were in the gallery last night. We had quite a packed gallery. You were there. Thank you for showing up. But essentially, we're showing a trail network. The site will be transit ready, so easily accessible by all in the community. We're hoping, and we're on purpose leaving the school site kind of vague at this point because you guys need to go through your planning, and that's, like you say, 8 to 12 years away still. But the end use will be a joint kind of seamless, hopefully, use area that is multi-use to all of these groups that we mentioned.
Absolutely, there's such synergy between the high school and the sports fields and the clubhouse and all of those kinds of pieces. It just provides great opportunity for synergies between the groups. And it's not on the plan, and somebody might sort of say, well, how come there's not a football field? Well, I can pretty well guarantee there will be on the high school site. It'll just take a few years on that to have a football field, and more than likely a soccer field as well.
Yeah, so no shortage of football fanatics in Cochrane.
No shortage, for sure.
So next steps on this whole site are to obviously finalize the annexation, which we're hearing is July 1st, roughly. We're waiting on the provincial government. Then we finalize our deal with yourselves, Rocky School Division, and then we can move forward with site grading, servicing, and then it's up to, we're hoping, user groups to start to fundraise for some of these facilities so that we have a plan forward to construct. So not happening in the near future, but in the next year or two, I would suspect we will see some action up there on the quarter section.
Absolutely, and for us to be able to move forward with the high school site, the site ready and the servicing all needs to be in place before we can even put it on our list of needs and wants. So it's good to see that will be moving forward in the next year or two.
Well, I just want to extend a great deal of thanks to Rocky View School Division and yourself for collaborating for this team effort to provide this quarter section of recreation, outdoor recreation facilities in the community. It's an exciting day. There's a lot of groups that will be excited and hopefully watching to see the outcome of last night's meeting. So this is the beginning of a lot of exciting things in town.
Like, it's been a few years in the making, but it's just, we still got lots more years to go with the great partnership between the town and the school division for years to come, to meet the needs of the students once the high school is built, but also for the community and all of the rec facilities up there for sure.
Great. Well, thanks for making the time today and joining us and giving a little bit of background on how we got to this morning.
Sure. Been great.
All right.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Yeah.
All right.
Take care.
Well, welcome back. Thank you to Fiona Gilbert, the trustee of the Rocky View School Division for our area, for joining us this morning and filling us in on that exciting project on the quarter section at Horse Creek, the Horse Creek Sports Park. Plans are now out there. It's public. We can talk about it. It's exciting. It's been a long time in the making, so if you want to check out more, I'm sure you can find information on letstalkcochrane.ca and go check it out for yourself. Zoom in, look at all the details, and it's an exciting project for the town of Cochrane, obviously. So, getting into last night's meeting, bear with me, it was a long meeting. We covered a lot. It was exciting. We had a lot of massive projects with huge implications to the future of the community. So, yeah, like I said, please bear with me. So, moving right into last night. So, I've got this this crown here and a scepter somewhere here. So I brought props, but oops, I got stuff going everywhere. So these, obviously there was a delegation last night from the Cochrane Library, and they are looking for a proclamation for July 27th to be Medieval Day in Cochrane. Presented council with a big scroll and had knights in shining armor and a big entourage of medieval people that presented a crown. Obviously, I'm just going to put this over here now. I was going to wear it, but it was kind of awkward, and maybe you'll have to wait for Medieval Day to see the crown in action. But council saw it fit to proclaim July 27th as Medieval Medieval Day, and there'll be Medieval Days down at the Cochrane Library. So thanks to that group for coming out and really having a lot of fun and bringing some lightheartedness to the council chamber last night. And it's always cool to see knights and Vikings in the chambers. So we don't get that every day. So anyways, that was the first delegation. Second one was the Cochrane Historical and Archival Preservation Society, CHAPS. They came to ask for help with the restoration of the museum that was devastated, I guess. Well, the basement flooded there back in the spring with the Big Hill Creek backing up in the ranch site and flooded their basement and did quite a bit of damage to the facility. So great outpouring in the community of donations. So they finally have come forward with a budget. They know what it's going to cost to fix everything. In fact, they have fixed everything already. It's up and running. To their credit, to those hardworking volunteers that have our museum and our history at heart. Thank you to them again. Council did thank them at length last night for all of the great work that they do for our community in preserving our history and really being stewards of our museum, of the museum. So Council saw it fit to assist in the top-up of their funds to the tune of $10,000 to help with the outstanding amounts that they were left with given the flood. So again, thanks to the CHAPS organization for everything they do. Third delegation was a really important one again. It just seemed to be a lot of important things on this agenda. We had a presentation from ISL Engineering, and it was called the North Calgary Regional Transportation Study, and maybe we'll get a graphic of that later. It's a pretty in-depth study that was undertaken by a few of the communities, Cochrane being one of them, Rocky County, Airdrie, Calgary, Chestermere, and it was the study of everything north of Glenmore Trail in Calgary, in the Calgary region, for transportation needs. So why this is so important and why we're focusing on it now, we had, as I said, a presentation last night. There was a criteria put forward by ISL. They are an engineering group. They studied, as I said, all of these, the highways, the infrastructure, and the upgrades required in the next 10 to 30 years that the Alberta Transportation is looking at. So I'm flipping through it, but the gist of it is that there was Cochrane's 1A and 22 intersection is listed in the top 10. Out of 160 projects that were identified throughout this region, Cochrane has 3 in the top 10, which should be no surprise to anybody that lives in our community. But important, I believe, in highlighting this to the Minister of Transportation, just exactly how important provincial investment in highway infrastructure upgrades is in our community and in our region. So out of the top 10, actually the 1A22 was 10th on the list, but not to take any, that in a negative way. I actually think it's very positive that there was only 11 points that differentiated between 10th and 2nd on the list, so you could almost interchange everything in the top 10. So the other one that was actually 3rd was the 1A twinning from going through Cochrane up through Glen Eagles. So those are the top 2. The 3rd was, I believe, 1A or 22 going south and north, widening and twinning that down to Highway 1. So these are all important thoroughfares in Cochrane and for the region. So it was exciting to actually hear that a Alberta Transportation funded study that is going back to the Deputy Minister and the Minister of Transportation that will really highlight the need for these projects to be funded, as I said, in our community. So that was the 3rd delegation. So we got through delegations in like an hour and a bit. There's also 2 public hearings last night, one on the East End neighborhood. There was a plot of land, a third lot, was it 316, I believe was the number, on Main Street, across from Krang Spirits and the dentist's office in that region of Main Street and the East End. There are 3 lots currently there that sit vacant. Council had rezoned 2 previously, I believe last year. A landowner for the third lot that's adjacent to these 2 is coming forward with a land use application to amend it from R2X to CB, which means there's some different uses that would be able to be built on that land, which would include commercial on the main floor and a couple of stories of residential above. So it was a public hearing. Council will vote on that at the next meeting. We just heard from a few residents the pros and cons of perhaps doing that rezoning. The other public hearing was about Heartland redesignation, and that's on the agenda. I'll get into that in a moment. In fact, I'll do that right now, since that is the next thing on the agenda was bylaws. We spoke about the Heartland redesignation. So I spoke about this last update. There was 125 lots in Heartland that through the busy time in the town's rapid growth, a development permit was missed, and it has caused some issues for people in the sale of their homes where they cannot get a certificate of compliance. Long story short, the town is remediating the problem. We're going through the steps to rezone the land so that all of these problems that people are having with the sale can be fixed. The town is going to pick up the costs of doing so. And it's minor, but it's important to some of these homeowners that are trying to sell their properties and fix the problem. So there's been some solutions put in place so that this doesn't happen again in the future. Again, long story short, council saw fit to rezone the land, and it's the beginning of fixing this development permit issue. We talked about the Horse Creek Master Plan. That really moves nicely into the next really large presentation last night, which was the Tri-Site Implementation Plan. So if you recall, last fall we went through the whole Tri-Site concept plan study where we engaged thoroughly with the residents, with stakeholders, with groups about needs for what could we put on the 3 town-owned lands in the center of the community: the Fifth Avenue site, the former Esso bulk dealership lands, and the library site. I'm not going to go through the entire implementation of it. You can find it online. It was a very detailed, a high level but detailed outline of each project that was outlined by the Tri-Site Implementation Committee, or the Tri-Site Plan Committee, and we really dove into what's the timeline, what's the rough funding for each project. Long story short on this one again is that the first site that we'll be developing is the transit site, which is the former Esso bulk dealership lands. That site will see transit hub be constructed there, and we have to spend that transit grant money within the next year, so we're up against a bit of a timeline, so we have to get this going. Design is currently underway. So what administration brought forward last night that is a little bit new is we've talked about tech and innovation and an incubator. Administration, to their credit, brought forward a plan to really look into the design and costs of what it would be to build another floor or 2 on top of the transit building. So we already have to put a foundation in the ground. We already have to build the transit facility, and we have the funding from the province to do that. But how much more would it be to leverage that grant to build extra accommodation for a tech incubator, innovation type center? So council approved last night that administration go ahead and research that, and that will come back to council for an ultimate decision to move forward, yay or nay, on the costing estimates that they're going to produce for us. So personally, I'm super excited about this. It was a unanimous decision. I'm thankful council is seeing things this way to really research how we can really move our community forward in the downtown core there by reinvesting in our future, in my view, in innovation, in technology, leveraging the companies we already have situated down there, and how can we foster more of that, really. So an incubator, just quickly, the one I visited in Waterloo a couple weeks back on my way back from Quebec City was, their model was a 2-year, prove yourself as a startup technology business. You have an idea, you come into the incubator, you have 2 years to generate a business, and then you are asked to leave the incubator. And what we found with the study there is that 65% of the businesses that are incubated, that are within the incubator program, are successful, and then they relocate in the community that they started in because they have hired employees that live in the region, and it's harder for them to move than when they started here. So our plan is still in the works. We don't have all the details, but I would really like it if we did some more research on the Waterloo project, as they have been very successful in generating a vibrant downtown, a really healthy economy in their community. It's bringing jobs, it's bringing it's really revitalizing their old warehouse district in Waterloo. So a site that sat vacant for 50 years is now an incubator site that is generating 60 to 80 businesses are housed in there every year, and out they go. So it's a great success story that I think that we are primed to maybe duplicate here in Cochrane. So we're going to take a look and see if that's feasible on this site at this time. Again, all of the other projects that were listed on the tri-site, I don't want to dismiss them as they're not important, but the first one obviously is going to be that transit hub. The others are 3 to 5 or 10 plus years out. You can go and take a look at those online. Again, that whole plan will be up on our website. So please check that out. The next thing, last thing I think on the agenda here was we had what's called a community enhancement evaluation, and that is a process that I think Cochrane's pretty unique in having in place, and that is when a landowner is looking to develop their lands in any way. They have to go through this community enhancement evaluation. So they bring their idea to council for feedback before they go back and plan a neighborhood, a park, whatever it is that they want on their land. So in this case, it was the Canadian Franciscan South lands, and that, if you're not aware, is the retreat lands, the Cochrane Hill. So the retreat, the Franciscans have been going through a process of community engagement. This is their 70th year being located up on the Cochrane Hill site. They own, I believe, 445 acres or so within the town and Rocky County, and they're coming forward with, they're really going through the process of identifying what is next in their land. So you've heard us on council and administration talking about the need for a vision for our community as we move forward long term. They're going through the same process with their lands. They would like to have a stake and a say in their future instead of Cochrane growing around them and then them being dealt with. They want to have a hand in their own future, I guess is a short way of saying it. So they came forward with their ideas. A little bit unique in the fact that usually when this happens, a developer or landowner and developer come forward with a plan for a neighborhood, with streets, with roads, with residential lots and parks and commercial areas or whatever it is that they're planning to do in front, and put that in front of council, and then we give feedback and say, you know, we need to have more parks, we need off-leash areas, we need biking trails, we need less residential, more commercial. We give feedback like that. So last night was different, where the Franciscans gave us us 3 options. Option A, they called it, was a massive park area, and that was option A. Option B was minor residential development with some connector roads through. Option C was major residential development with obviously more road networks connecting. And this was all on the lower flat plateau of the lands. There's the 4th Avenue down here. There's a level flat area that goes around and wraps into kind of the Glen Eagles overpass and into Sunterra. And then there's the massive Cochrane Hill above. So to be clear, none of the options have any development on the hill, on any slopes. So what I'm very excited about is that whatever happens in the future, the Cochrane Hill will be accessible to all residents of Cochrane. At least that's what we're talking about. And that's what I would like to see, and that was shared by most of council last night. So their plan had a lot of really great guiding principles. As I say, this is a little bit of a unique situation. There is no developer in the mix at this point. This is just the Franciscans researching how best to move forward in the future with their lands, and we don't know what that is yet, I guess, but they're working on that. So this is the beginning of a conversation to start the process of what it is that those lands could turn into in Cochrane. So as you may or may not be aware, it is private property right now. The Cochrane Hill is a significant sacred, if you will, piece of property that is dear and near to all of Cochrane. Although it is private property, I would hazard to say that everybody has some connection to that space, whether it be historically as prior first contact with Indigenous peoples in these lands, the retreat themselves having been there for 70 years. Every single person I talk to who has moved to Cochrane talks about when they eclipsed the Cochrane Hill and their first arrival into the community. So you're connected to it in some way or another, so it's very important how we move forward with the Franciscans in any form of development that may occur here. So very early on in the discussions, so stay tuned, I guess, is the short story, but it was the first foray into really talking about what the Cochrane Hill could become in the future. So all of council gave feedback, great feedback, I must say. If you want to check that out in more detail, please click on the council agenda from last night. It'll be archived, it was streamed live, but you can connect on it and go to any one of these agenda items in more detail. It may not seem like it, but I'm going through it fairly quickly. And that was really the fulsome discussion we had last night, was these major projects. So very important night for Cochrane in many ways. Outdoor recreation, potential future of the retreat and Franciscan lands, the tri-site implementation, transportation. Very, very big night at council last night. I think we got home around 11:30. So again, thank you for joining me. That is the end of this Fireside Chat. I appreciate you tuning in, and we'll see you next time.